Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening. How's everybody?
Good evening,
How you doing,
Professor.
Professor? How you doing, Professor?
Good evening. How are you, Damien? How are you, Anna? How are you, Kazi?
Well, thanks for
Um,
asking.
well, uh, three people only, right? I right before I came to the Collaborate, when I checked today's forum, you see, this is the number of people currently in today's forum. So there's at least nine people, and we have only four here. So five. We're still waiting for the other five to join. But again, as I have always said, collaborate is not mandatory because collaborate is only a review, right? Collaborate is only a review and reflection. And the main lecture, the actual main lecture is, it goes by the schedule. So as of today, actually, all by the main lecture, all the stock valuation models are over, and we should be into you should be into bond portfolio management, and yeah, you should be up to like immunization. Wow, so that's already, you know, immunization. Yeah, these are today's duration: one, two, three. And immunization one, two, three. Um, so I just want you to make sure that you're all caught up. Um, I mean, you still have until next Thursday. I mean, the video will run until next. Will be the video will be available until next end of next Wednesday. So you have time. But I want you to be all caught up all the way to this, right? And everyone should also be reminded of the first midterm, right? We have three midterms and one final. First midterm, we're just a little behind, a little behind the schedule. Somehow I should have actually, ideally, it should have been last weekend. But what can I do? Um, so please don't forget that the midterm instruction is there, right? And your midterm starts this Friday. Okay. All righty. So, all right. Enough of that. We still have 10 people and still have only four. Only four. What's going on? Um, I want. Okay. So here, we're kind of running really, way behind because we're still caught up in the stock valuation. And okay, this thing is giving me. Oops.
Professor,
Yeah,
is the
I'm
midterm
listening.
time?
Yeah,
Okay.
the midterm time. Yeah, what about it? You
No, I
have
said, is
like,
it like
hmm?
like when we is it timed? Like when we open it, will we have like to complete it like
Uh,
an hour or 2 hours or?
yeah. It's timed. It's timed. You'll need to complete it within. Um, is it 120 minutes? Let me see. 100. Let's go back to the announcement. Uh, Okay. You have 2 attempts, and oh, it didn't. But you'll have like 2 hours. Let me just make sure. And you will see. Oh, something I need to. Time limit 180 minutes. You have 3 hours. Okay, you have 3 hours, but
Okay,
you
thank
have
you.
to do it in one.
I
That
said,
will be
okay,
more
thank
than
you
enough.
for the info.
All right, you're welcome. All righty, let me. What was that thing? Hmm, 2 attempts. 10% deduction from second attempt. Oh, here, accept late submission. Oh. All my Bluetooth devices are acting up. Let's see. You'll be able to see. Okay. Wow. No, I don't think you can see anything. The share my screen is, share my application is off. Okay. Show my screen. So you see, this is where am I? This is what you can see. I mean, this is the student view of the assignments. This one is already past due. This one, today is what? October, today is 14th. The due date is tomorrow. But again, you can submit it late. And, but there will be like 5% late penalty per each day late. And chapter 11 is already on. Due date is October 29th. 14th is on today, right? So there are chapter 14. And then the other ones, chapter 12, 5, 6, 7, these are not yet available. Midterm 1 is not available. It's going to be available October 15th. Okay, so as long as you have access to connect, and everything will, think about it. My system, my courses are, nothing is loose. Everything works like everything is supposed to work like a clock, right? Um, when it's the time, then scheduled time, it's gonna be activated. It's gonna be on. It's the clock that triggers everything. It and So if you just stick with the uh, if you just stick with the main lecture, and everything is synchronized. All these are synchronized with the main lecture. Okay, main lecture schedule. So don't miss the main lecture. I mean, as I said, and my main lectures are up there for 1 week. And if you want something that is past, right, 1 week, so you cannot see it anymore there, you always have my um, playlist, right, on YouTube, and you have there CUNY BMCC FNB300, right? That will, you can look it up, and you can look up all the videos that are more than 5 days old, okay, or even future ones. But at this point, there's no point in. All right, so let me. This will take me some time. Okay. Getting smaller. Previously, it was getting bigger. And it was okay, that's too much. So I want to refresh your memory. So we have 4 valuation models, right? In stock, we have 4 valuation models. First, constant dividend model or zero growth model, also called perpetuity model, right? And then the second model is golden growth model, which is also called constant dividend growth model. And the third one is variable growth model. Fourth one is free cash flow model. But before we go on to variable growth model, we need to understand where that growth rate come from. Of course, the growth rate came from geometric average. It came from the geometric average of the past dividend data. Okay, but then if you don't have past dividend data, how do you find the growth rate? Now, so let's go back to the basics of this model. We know the golden growth model is basically dividend at time t+1 or time 1 over k minus g. We know k is the required return. G is the growth rate. And how do we find dividend at time t+1? It's one period into the future. I mean, we don't know what it's going to be like, but we can make a forecast as long as we know the growth rate. So if you know the growth rate, all we need to do is compound it just once. I mean, current dividend, which is the dividend at time 0, which is the dividend as of the end of last period and the beginning of this period, right? Um, because we have the data, dividend data. Now, all we need to do is compound it once by the growth rate. And the question is, how do we find the growth rate? As I said, from the data. If we have, past dividend data, then we take the geometric average of the past dividend. That's one way. Also, think about it. I must have talked about earnings season last time. Did I talk about earnings season? What is earnings season? Anyone? You might wonder, is there a separate, is there a particular season for earning? Isn't earnings, as the company operates, isn't earnings, basically constant whenever they have revenue? They sell something and have revenue, isn't it constant? Actually, earnings season means actually earnings reporting season, right? Anybody remembers anything about this? Or was it, maybe
It's
not
when
finance
like
company?
all the big companies, they report their earnings, their quarter earnings.
Yeah. So, yeah. So obviously, earnings report will have to come after the quarter is over. Isn't that right?
Yeah, isn't
After
it
the quarter
reported
is
every
over.
3 months,
Yes.
quarterly?
Uh,
Quarterly, Professor. Every
yeah,
3 months.
quarterly, of course. It has to be. But then think about it. What I'm saying is, you cannot report earnings of the third quarter while third quarter is still on. You understand? Third quarter
Yeah. That's
earnings can be reported only after the third quarter is over, right? It's for
exactly.
every quarter, it's the same thing. First quarter has to be over. First quarter has to end for there to be first quarter earnings report, right? And second quarter has to be over, right, for there to be the second quarter earnings report, right? So earnings season, more specifically, earnings report season, is actually the first month of each quarter. First month of each quarter. You understand? Why? Now we are in October, right? We're in October now. October is the earnings reporting season for the third quarter. You understand? Third quarter ended September 30th, right? So their earnings data, they compile the data and then they calculate their earnings for the third quarter and report it in October. Okay? Does that make sense? So the fourth quarter earnings report will be in the first quarter of next year, right? Second quarter earnings report came out in July, right? First quarter earnings report came out in April. So the first month of every quarter is called earnings season. And then once they report earnings, then what do they do? After reporting earnings, what comes next? Anybody?
What you mean, Professor? What comes next?
Say that again.
What do you mean? Like after the quarterly reports? I don't know.
After the quarterly earnings report, then what do they do? So think about it.
They pay out.
Yeah, they pay out. Yeah, they pay
Dividends.
out. Yes, Anna, I will give you. Anna. This is like I was kind of afraid that I had to give more additional explanation. It's nothing to be afraid, but it just takes just more time, and but you got, you read my intent. Today is what, 14th, right? Anna. Okay, I'll give you 0.5 point for that.
Thank you,
Uh,
Professor.
you're welcome. I mean, it was a good answer because, without any further explanation, you read my intention, right? That was a good answer, right? Uh, guessing the speaker's intention is also a big part. I mean, you can stay one step ahead, yeah. Look, not all the companies, right? Not all the companies can do that, but not all the companies. I've been telling you, dividend is dividend is not uh, dividend is not a must, right? Interest payment. If you sold bonds, you have to pay interest. It's a must, right? Because it's a debt. Paying interest is an obligation, but paying dividend is not an obligation, right? It's optional. Okay, and uh, the growth firms, so think about it. Some companies pay out dividends, some companies don't. And what companies don't pay out dividends? Well, growth firms don't pay out dividends. Growth firms don't pay out dividends. Growth firms. Why? Think about it. Growth firms are so called, right? Growth firms are called growth firms because they grow fast. And to grow fast, they need to reinvest all their earnings. In other words, they need to plow back. They need to plow back all their earnings into growth, right? So even if the profit belongs to the shareholders, they don't pay out to the shareholders. They don't redistribute it to the shareholders. I mean, dividend is a small fraction of the earnings that gets redistributed to the shareholders. But I've been telling you over and over, if you want to recoup that profit, all you need to do is sell your stocks, sell your shares. Then you will recoup, right? That earnings will be reflected in the stock price because that's earnings will be added. Think about it. Earnings, the EAT or net profit, earnings after taxes, or the net profit, that is equity. Isn't that right? It's equity. Why? It belongs to the owners, right? It belongs to the owners. And it's not paid in capital. I mean, the original equity is paid in capital because at IPO, when the company sold stocks, then investors that pay that IPO price, they paid in that capital to the company. So the company raised equity capital that way. That's paid in capital. And if it is $10 billion, that's the company's paid in equity at time zero. But 1 year later, think about it. 1 year later, at time one, there will be EAT at time one, earnings after taxes at time one, which is net profit. I think you might find it. Okay, so okay, let me write here. Equity at time zero. This is a paid in capital. Paid in. But 1 year later, there will be EAT, right? Earnings after taxes or net profit. at time 1. And this is equity capital generated by and there are only 2 types of capital, isn't that right? Either equity or debt. So earning net profit is in terms of capital components, right? In terms of capital components, it is equity, right? It cannot be debt. They don't. Owners. It belongs to the owners. They don't owe it to anyone. Equity generated. I wish there can be voice typing. Equity generated by operating activity. Right? It's so hard to write. It's not writing, it's drawing with the mouse. It's so hard. So if
you got a computer pen, Professor.
You know what? I wish I would. Yeah. Well, I tried. I have a Dell. Dell. If you can look up. I mean, is there any computer pen? I mean, there used to be stylus, right? Stylus for the.
Definitely pens available.
Hmm? There used to be stylus for the notepad, right? But it must be. It should be something else. I tried that stylus.
The
rubber.
right now, $78.99. Dell Active Pen PN556W.
Can you drop it in the? Can you drop it in the chat window? Yeah, I would really appreciate it. And does it work with is it model specific, maker and model specific or it's universal?
It's universal. You'll be able to program.
Okay, I gotta get that because I tried to do it with the stylus, the rubber tipped stylus, and it's not. But it's really it takes it will really help me a lot. All righty. So so equity generated. So EAT is the equity generated by the operating activity. And since this is a laptop, I never thought of using a stylus on it, but yeah, there must be a separate pen. I'm kind of since the pandemic, I'm technology-wise, I'm running behind. And then think about it. At the end of time 1, right? Our equity 1 will be different from equity at time 0, and our equity at time 1 will clearly reflect that EAT. In other words, equity at time 1 will be equity at time 0 plus EAT at time 1. Right? And then if you divide all of this, by the number of shares outstanding, number of shares outstanding, that's called what? That's book value per share at time 1. Isn't that right? book value per share at time 1. Now, if you did, if you divided this by number of shares, then that's, in other words, if I divided this EQ0 by equity at time 0 by number of shares, then that would be book value per share at time 0, right? Okay, and if I divided equity at time 0 by number of shares, then that's book value per share at time 0. Now, the difference, between book value per share at time 1 and book value per share at time 0, that's exactly earnings per share. In other words, again, if you divide this, right, EAT, if you divide EAT, right, if you divide this by, that's EAT at time 1, again, number of shares, right? If you divide it by number of shares, then what is that? That's earnings per share at time 1, right? So the difference between book value per share at time 1 and book value per share at time 0 is exactly the earnings per share at time 1, right? Everyone is okay with this? Now, again, since it is book value, market price can be different from this, right? Market price can be different. I mean, if the earnings was very good, then because of that positive, the positive result, right? There will be a positive expectations, and then market value will be above book value, way above book value. If earnings per share was negative or 0 or very little, then the adverse expectations are formed. Adverse expectations are formed, and market price at time 1 can be below book value per share. Now the thing is, so once again, the company doesn't have to pay out dividends. Think about it. Company doesn't have to pay out dividends, because if the investor, if the shareholder wants to recoup that profit, then all he has to do is sell, right? Sell his holdings. So that's why dividend is not a must, and growth firms will want to pay out, will not pay out dividends at all. They will want to plow back everything into growth, so that the growth will be, reinforced. Okay. And on the other hand, mature firms pay out dividends because mature firms means, their growth potential is very low, right? And if the growth, obviously, mature firms have low growth potentials because mature means, in terms of market share, right? In terms of market share, their market share is huge, and there's hardly any more room for growth. I mean, when I say market share, it's not only geographic market share, but also in terms of demographic, psychographic market shares. I mean, always there will be some room for, there is always different target segment. For example, in terms of demographics, there are also psychographic market share. People who have this particular propensity for, let's say, I mean, small differentiations in the products. It's all to address that particular, even small target market segment that has that specific tendency, right? I don't know. I don't, these days, people, it's not only YouTube, Netflix, and things like that, that influence the market. Consumers are all influenced by, in the old days, American Top 40, was the only thing. Back in 1970s and 80s, American Top 40. That was the only thing, and that was the main venue for culture. These days, YouTube, Netflix, I mean, BTS. Why is BTS so big? Without YouTube, there was no venue, right? Probably, I don't know, American Top 40. I mean, what is that? Does it go by a different name these days? But whatever. Because these days people just download the music, not, they don't just, it's not only FM radio. But I'm that generation, FM radio. And then Squid Game. I mean, who would ever heard of Squid Game? But because of Netflix. But all these, for market segment, like for people like me, it will never sell. But for people who have that, cultural following, or, the tendency. I mean, they are saying this year's Halloween costume. This year's Halloween costume is mainly inspired by Squid Game theme. And actually, it's not South Korea making money from Halloween costume. I mean, the Squid Game is, a South Korean production. But who makes money from? It's China. China makes money from making, these Squid Game costumes. Interesting thing is, if there is a patent or copyright on, like the items that were featured in the show, I think it's a little, mistake by the South Korean producer, because if they patented or copyrighted all the items that were featured in that film, in that show, then for any non-licensed producer to produce anything, to make anything featured in that show will be illegal. Of course, China will go ahead and still. But think about it. Who would have ever thought the target markets can be market segments can be um, um, developed. In other words, um, so growth potential. You can never say the growth potential is zero, because if growth potential is zero for a company like Coca-Cola, I mean, think about it. Coca-Cola, Coke is global. Geographically, there is nowhere it can grow into anymore, right? Maybe North Korea. Probably in North Korea, maybe even in South Pole, they have Coke, the vending machines. You might wonder what vending machine in South. There are many research bases, U.S. as a research base, UK, Argentina, France, all the South Korea, almost all OECD countries have a research base in South Pole, and then in their research base, they have vending machine, they have Coke, right? They're on it's like being on a submarine duty. If you're on a nuclear submarine, uh, I had a friend when I was in graduate school. One of the classmates was, Navy in Navy, and he like a Navy naval officer. He, of course, retired. Not because he was old, but just like on reserve. And he was on a submarine. And once on a nuclear submarine, if you're on a nuclear submarine, once you're on a tour, on a mission or tour, it takes almost 6 months. No, without surfacing. Maybe once or twice they may surface, but you don't need to refuel for a very long time. Nuclear submarines don't need to refuel for a very long time. You can go submerged, you can go on a mission even for years without, of course, you will have to surface at some point to restock the supplies, you have to eat fresh water and things like that. But, why did the South Pole, the research bases in South Pole, once they're on like a rotation, 6-month rotation. So, but they have Coke, there. Maybe probably not in North Korea. I believe even in North Korea, where they have hotels for foreigners, foreign visitors, or foreign correspondents, or foreign businessmen, foreign diplomats, they must have hotels, like international level, like at least four-star level hotel. Not very many, probably just in the capital. But for average citizens, Coke is capitalist. That is, corrupting the minds of people. So it must be banned, right? It's a vanguard, typical vanguard item of the merchandise of the capitalism. So it must be banned to the average citizen. Of course, average citizen in North Korea would be like a slave, yes, to a slave, Coke is obviously, beyond, what you can expect. But the point is, what I'm trying to say is, geographically, maybe, there's no more room for growth, but, they can always tweak the product a little. And there's, it could be Diet Coke, zero calorie or whatever, zero sugar. and for all these people who are all these market segments that are that want that want no calorie, no sugar. I mean, there's a market segment for it. So again, I said this because I digressed a little because mature firms don't pay. Mature firms pay dividends. Mature firms have little room for growth, so it makes no sense to retain all that earnings, right? So they pay out dividends, but growth firms don't pay out dividends because they have to plow it back. They have to plow back all that earnings for growth. Okay. So next question is then I said also that growth rate of the dividend is the result. There are two ways to find growth rates. One, if you first of all you have past dividend data. So let's take a look at. Oh no, not did I put it here? I thought I did. Yeah. This is forecasting. Where is that example? I didn't put that example here. So okay, suppose we have dividend data like of last 5 years, dividend data. Time. And 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016. That's last 5 years. And let's say dividend. Let's say dividend was $2, $1.50, $1.50, maybe not, $1.75. Let's say $1.75. $1.60, and $1.50. And in 2016, that was, that's end of the year always, end of the year, because annual dividends, they cannot pay. Annual dividend means two things. One of the two things, in reality, because they pay out dividends quarterly, right? And so dividends, there will be 4 dividends, per year. And so if you sum all of those 4 quarterly dividends, then that's annual dividend. Okay. And otherwise, if a company pays out dividends just annually once a year, then that's annual dividends. But anyway, the point is, you cannot have annual dividend until the end of the year. So we know 2020 dividends at the beginning of 2021. Oh, also, I forgot to mention. So October is earnings reporting season, right? They just call it earnings season. Then dividend is paid. Now, earnings report has to come out, and then the dividends are paid in the second month of the quarter, right? Some companies may pay a little earlier, but some companies may a little late. I mean, think about it. Earnings reports also come out at different times. I mean, some companies release earnings report in the first week of August, first week of October. Some companies do it in the second week of October, third week of October, fourth week of October. I mean, not all the companies release earnings report all at the same time. I mean, they all, but generally they all report earnings in October, right? For third quarter. For the second quarter, they all report earnings in July. And then the dividends are then paid in the second month. So November, dividends will be paid in November. For the second quarter, dividend was paid in August, right? Again, it's not always the same for every company. Some companies pay out dividends a little early. It could be the last week of October, or first week of November, second week of November. But in general, most of the companies will pay out dividends in the second month, right? So just like that, it's uneven, right? But in general, there's a tendency, and it's basically the time it takes to compile the data and then calculate, right, the earnings, and then calculate the dividends, right? And then there will have to be the approval of the board of directors, and some administrative steps. But anyway, so if we have dividends, past dividends for past 5 years, what do? We'll have to take the average. But then if you think, oh, so average, so I add them up and divide it by 5. No, a simple average, right? You should know, this is fnb300, right? You know already that it's the growth is not cannot be averaged by simple average. There's a compounding effect. So the average we're talking about here is geometric average, or CAGR, compounded annual growth rate, right? Which is just another name for geometric average. Yeah. And how do you find geometric average? This is also Finance 100 material. Future value over present value raised to 1 over n minus 1. Okay, so in this case, it's 2 over. Now think about it. The growth rate in dividends are all uneven, right? Between this and this, and this and this, this and this, and this and this, growth rates are uneven. But average means, we'll find a to make a forecast, of dividend for 2021, right? We'll need a growth rate, and that growth rate will have to come from geometric average, average growth rate for forecasting 2021, and it's gonna be so 2 over 1.25 raised to 1 over 5 minus 1. Will anybody quickly run the let me open. I normally do this using Excel because when you have data, of course using Excel is the best thing, but I don't want to input all of this all over again, so I will just quickly use the anybody already came up with this? Anyone? Or you're just too lazy to do that? So I'm gonna so it's gonna be 2 over 1.25 and then raised to 1 over 5 close parenthesis, okay, minus 1 comes to 9.86%, right? 9.856. .856%, or roughly 9.9% or 9.86%, right? Okay, this is one way you find the growth rate. Okay, and then what do? Oh, so then 2000. Dividend at time t plus 1. Dividend 0 is 2020, right? So dividend at time t plus 1, right? So time t plus 1 is 2021. It's obvious, right? End of 2021. We're not at the end of 2021, we know. And time t is then 2020. So how do we find it? It's dividend at time t, which is dividend at the end of 2020 times 1 plus, right, 0.09, 1 plus 9.856%, so 1.0986. Okay. So this means time t is 2020, right? Okay, so that's 2020. Okay, so that's how we find, how we forecast, dividend one period ahead. Okay, and if you do the calculation, right, $2 times then 1.0, it's almost 10%, 99, right, or 986. We use the calculator, times 2, plus 1 first, plus 1, and then times 2. It will be $2.19, 9197. So that's almost $2.20, right? Okay, so we forecast one time t plus one dividend at time t plus one this way, and then we divide it by k minus g. I mean so that's basically Gordon growth model. But another way we can find growth rate. Another way, one way we find the growth rate this way, data. But if you don't have the data, past data, how do we find it? So that will be our next discussion. It's 7:08, so I think it's a good time to take a 10-minute break. So we're gonna reconvene at 7:18 sharp. Okay. All righty. So let's take a 10-minute. All right, we're back. We're back. So the time flies. Time flies by very fast. So how do we find growth rate when we don't have the data? Now, another way of doing it is by the definition. So I'm not going to go over this again, but I'm not going to go over that again. But quickly, just quickly. Okay, let's see how many people are here. 7, right? 6 people. What's going on? We have at least like 20 people in this class. Only 6. Today's forum. And according to today's discussion board, there are 15 people, at least 15 people, and only 6 are here. Where's the rest of them? Okay, I'm glad to see Giselle here. Giselle, are you here? Giselle?
Yes, Professor, I'm here.
All right, thank you. I can count on you. Ethan, are you here? Ethan?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Yeah, I can count on you. Anthony, are you here? Anthony, you are here. In the first hour. I don't know if you're. Anna must be here, right? Anna, are you here? Anna?
Yeah, I'm here, Professor.
Well, of course, I can always count on you. Larissa, are you here? Larissa.
I'm here.
Okay, good. Larissa, did you contact the McGraw-Hill campus representative?
Not yet. I didn't saw your message, so
Okay.
I will contact
Let me know. I mean,
Okay.
she can, and because the exam starts tomorrow, you need to do it ASAP.
Okay.
And just in case, if you don't get the resolution immediately, just send me an email. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Now, you're welcome. Vladimir, are you here, Vladimir?
Yes, I'm here, Professor.
Okay, good. So at least I have 6 people, dependable 6 people here. So if you remember, if the market price is equal to intrinsic value, and intrinsic value is the price of the stock that is calculated by the valuation model. In our case, golden growth model, right? So, and if you think about it, and I gave you the breakdown of the golden growth model, how the steps of derivation, and in that you golden growth model can be basically broken down like this into remember. Maybe it's better to recall that file. That's too much. So now think about it. We can break it down. We can break it down like this. Basically, we all understand price at time t times 1 plus k will entail price at time t plus 1 and dividend at time t plus 1. So if we rearrange this by dividing both sides by pt, right, the left-hand side will be, will be 1 over, 1 plus g, right, plus dt plus 1 over pt, right, because pt and pt cancel out. But now let's take a look at this again. So look at the right-hand side. Dividend at time 1 over p0. That's d. Dt plus 1 over pt plus g, right? And again, this 1 and 1 will cancel out each other, right? 1 and 1 will cancel out. Dt plus 1 over pt will be, k minus g on the right-hand side. And if you think about it, this is what? This is k, isn't it right? This is k, right? This is k. So if I have, that's exactly what growth, this is k. This is k, right? This is k. In other words, let me put it like this. I had it, I wrote it here. Let's see if I can copy the whole thing. No. I'll just write it again. This is gonna take copying it will be. Okay. So many things are unintended. Then think about it. If I the way it was arranged here was dt plus 1 over pt plus g. So if I move this to the left-hand side, right? So in this equation, this is basically, what the definition of k is, right? So rewriting it like, and it's some people don't realize the importance of the time subscript. Time subscripts are literally subscripts. You cannot write it You cannot write it as if they are the regular variables. In other words, what I'm saying is writing it like this is wrong. You understand? If you write it like this is wrong. Why? Because it's like d times t plus 1, right? And it's a totally different thing. Time subscripts are subscripts. You must use subscript, right? It's a time marker. I mean, then this is not time marker. If you write it like this, then they are time is a variable here, right? So that's wrong. Now let me then rewrite it. If I have put it like this, then what is k? K is by definition, right? Oh, I have to. Pt plus 1 plus dt plus 1 I. dt plus 1 over pt. Right? Isn't that what the return is? Isn't that what return, holding period return is? That's the definition of return, right? And then that's k, and then here is dt plus 1 over pt minus g. Now then think about it. I can rearrange this to dt plus 1 over pt plus I missed something there. Actually, I missed the same thing, right? But what I missed was, okay. So think about it. This is the capital gain, right? And this is, income or cash flow, right? Capital gains and income. And that's the definition of holding period return. That's the definition of holding pure rate of return. In other words, K. So mathematically, this part this portion is really G, if you think about it. This portion is really G, actually, right? That's the definition of G. If you have G here and G there, you might say, okay, let's see. So they should cancel out. They must. Of course, think about it. Then this is an identity, right? It's an identity. Why? Because the right-hand side is here. Oh, that wasn't. I'm sorry. That was not negative. It wasn't minus. Now think about it. The right-hand side and the left-hand side exactly mean the same thing. It means the same thing, isn't it right? It means the same thing. Isn't it right? Dt plus 1 over pt, dt plus 1 over pt, pt plus 1 minus pt over pt. What did I say? That is G. So of course, left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. But the whole thing, this whole thing, what is this whole thing? This whole thing is K. Oh, give me a break. This whole thing is K, the return on equity. The return, cost of capital, cost of equity, right? Which is no required return. So you might think, what is that? What's so great about that? If you think about it, this is called, right? This term. Oh, come on. I can't make a good circle. Oh, yeah. Let me make a good circle. Okay, I give up. I'm not going to make a circle anymore. This term is called dividend yield. Okay, and this term is growth rate of the capital gains, if you think about it, right? Capital gains growth rate. And the name for that is capital gains yield. So Now, from Finance 100, you must have learned, I mean, at least from my Finance 100, you must have learned, yield is another name for return, right? Yield is another name for rate of return, right? So think about it. This is the dividend yield means for the price you paid. For the price you paid, how much dividend did the stock return, right? Dividend yield means how much return, how much dividend did the stock return you? That's dividend yield. Capital gains yield literally means, how much capital gains did the stock give you? How much capital gains did the stock return you for the price you paid, right? For the price you paid, how much capital gains did it return you? So basically, required return or the holding period return, required return can be defined as dividend yield. In other words, return in dividend, right? Dividend return to the price you paid plus capital gains. I mean, capital gains return. So that's basically, what the required return in stock is. And in any return, I mean, not only stock but also bond, any asset that is supposed to give you or return to you the capital gains plus additional income, I mean, this is how it is defined, right? This is how it is defined. This is how the holding period return is defined, right? Isn't that right? And think about it. The general notation of the holding period return is general notation of holding period return. Is price at time t plus 1 minus price at time t plus some of the all the cash flows, right? Of course, during t plus 1 and t, there will be only one cash flow. So let me make this t plus n between, for holding period n, right? The return will have to be pt plus n minus pt plus all the cash flows where t runs from 1 to n. Divided by pt. That's basically the definition of holding period return. And this is what? This is capital gains. This is capital gains yield or growth rate, right? And then this is, dividend yield, right? In case of stock, it's dividend, right? In case of stock, it's dividend. Yeah. So you just learned new terms, dividend yield and capital gains yield. But that's basically the structure of, holding period return, right? Any holding period return is, basically. And then let me just refresh your memory about let me just jostle your memory. Let me jostle your memory about the bond. In case of bond, in stock you have dividend, but in case of bond you also have you have coupons, right? What is like dividend to stock? In bond, what is like dividend to stock is coupon, right? In bond. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have something to say? Now,
No, I was just saying coupon payment is what else.
yeah, coupon payment, right? So just like that's like dividend in stock, whereas dividend is not a fixed number, but coupon payment is a fixed amount all the time. But when you divide coupon by the price you paid, price of the bond, the market price of the bond that you paid, so that is the price at time zero, right? So in case of bond, what do you call this? Coupon divided by actually annual coupon. This means annual coupon. Annual coupon divided by price you paid. What is this called? Do you remember? Annual coupon payment divided by the price you paid for the bond. What's that called? You forgot? It's called current It's called current yield. It's called current yield. Okay, you forgot? It's called current yield. So what is equivalent to dividend yield in bond is current yield. Okay, because the term dividend yield came up and capital gains yield came up. Current yield, that's equivalent to dividend yield in bond. Now, also, you all understand that the dividend is only part of the earnings per share. Isn't that right? Dividend comes out of, I did it. I believe I did it here. You remember, dividend is from EAT, right? Earnings after taxes, which is net profit. Okay, so I'll have to write it here. From EAT, which is net profit, let's say EAT is $10 million. They decided to pay out 10%, 10% of this as dividend. So that's called dividend payout ratio. Which is 10%. It's also simply called D. Of course, why lowercase d, right? Why spell out everything? That means dividend at time 1 will be 1 million. $1 million, right? $1 million. And then so you pay out 1 million, right? Then there will be 9 million left. And what's this 9 million called? What's this 9 million called? After paying out 1 million as dividend, what's this 9 million called? Anybody?
Is it the plowback?
Yeah, it will be eventually plowed back, but the name is the official name is not plowback. You're right, it's going to be plowed back, but what is the official name? What is the official name? Anybody? Look, you paid out 1 million as dividend, so whatever is left is called retained
earnings.
Yes, retained earnings. And who was that?
Anthony Neuer.
Anthony, can you do something to your microphone, because your voice sounds.
I'll try.
Yeah, your voice sounds very dim. Yes, it's called retained earnings, right? So Anthony, I'll give you 0.25 for.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yes, that's called retained earnings, and this is going to be plowed back, right? It's going to be plowed back. So of course, Anna, I'll give you also 0.25 because you have the concept. I just didn't nail the name. This is going to be plowed back, but in essence they mean. But let's see. There are 1 million shares outstanding. Okay, 1 million shares outstanding. Then you'll need to divide it by 1 million, right? 1 million shares. And if you divide it by 1 million shares, then what is that called? And that's $10, isn't that right? $10 per share, isn't that right? $10 per share. So the name for this name is, what is this called? You should know already, because we talked about this.
Earnings per share?
Yeah, that's earnings per share. Exactly, that's earnings per share. Okay, at time 1, earnings per share at time 1. And dividend per share then will be, per each share, you divide it by 1 million shares. So it's going to be $1, right, per share, $1 per share. So that's the dividend per share, right? Usually when we say dividend, it's dividend per share, right? dividend, right? $1 per share. Okay. All righty, Anna. So you said that. Yeah, that's dividend per share. And you said earnings per share. So I'm going to give you another 0.25 for that. Now, think about it. Since we were talking about dividend yield, capital gains yield, which is growth rate, current yield, dividend yield is basically a dividend at time t plus 1 over pt. Now, if we have, and dividend is only part of the earnings per share, right? When we say dividend, it's always per share concept, per share concept. So, and dividend is only part of earnings per share. So we can do the same thing. I mean, what's important from the investors, shareholders' perspective is what's my earnings per share, because that's my profit per share. So if I divide earnings per share at time t plus 1, I'm going to develop carpal tunnel syndrome this way. If I divide it by PT, what should it be called? Think about it. If I divide it by PT, what should that be called? Any idea?
The PT, what it stands for? Or?
No, not PT only. Earnings per share at time t plus 1 divided by PT. Okay? What should this ratio be called? You should get a good idea. I mean, dividend at time t plus 1 divided by PT is called dividend yield, right? The growth rate, PT plus 1 minus PT over PT. In other words, capital gains over PT, right? Capital gains over PT is called capital gains yield, right? Right? Because this is we all know this is capital gains. That's going to be called, capital gains yield. And then in bond, annual coupon payment over PT, in other words, annual coupon payment over PT, price you paid, that's called current yield. That's called current yield. Okay. Then what should earnings per share over PT, earnings per share at t plus 1, time t plus 1 over PT, what should it be called? Now you must have a pretty good idea by now. Anyone? Okay, since nobody said anything, it's called earnings yield. It's called earnings yield. And think about it. This is more than, I would say, rather than dividend yield, this is more important ratio. This is the more important number, right? Think about it. Who cares about dividend? Huh? I've been telling you, growth firms don't pay dividends, right? I mean, dividend, it's in stock valuation model is all dividend discount models. So then, we have to have dividend to use these models. But there are companies that don't pay dividends. And when they don't pay dividends, then how would you value that? A big question. Of course, there's a free cash flow model is what we use, but the important point is who cares about dividends? I mean, dividends, it may be necessary for the dividend discount model, but as an investor, as a stockholder, what matters to you most is rather earnings per share, because they can pay dividend or not. And dividend is only a fraction, a part of earnings per share, right? It's only a part of earnings per share. So even if they don't pay out any dividends, you can still recoup all that earnings per share by selling your stocks, right? Make sense? And the important number is always earnings, not the dividend. Okay? Don't get, the reason I'm telling you this is because I don't want you to get carried away by the dividend, because stock valuation models are all dividend discount models. Don't get carried away by dividends. They are, they serve an important role in the valuation models, but what's more important, what's more crucial to an investor is the earnings per share. Therefore, our earnings yield is more important number than dividend yield. And think about it, between earnings yield and dividend yield, which do you think is greater? This is just the logic.
Earnings.
Earnings per yeah, earnings yield will have to be. Why? Same denominator. You divide the same denominator by a different numerator, and in that case, whichever has bigger numerator, the fraction will always end up bigger, right? This number is always bigger than dividend yield. Nobody cares about dividend yield. I mean, unless you are income investor. I mean, your investing, your goal of investing is to for income. Then, if you are that kind of investor, usually, senior citizens will be interested in income from stock because they are retired, and whatever increases, they don't have regular source of income, earned income. They live off their retirement savings, retirement account, and social security. Therefore, whatever increases income, right? So they invest in income stock, which are basically mature firms that pay dividends, handsome dividends. But if you're young, you don't care about dividend. You just care about the growth, right? You care about the growth. And growth comes mainly from earnings, right? So anyway, but think about it. If you flip this, it's not exactly if you flip this, right? If you flip this, what is it? If you flip that, in other words, if you take the reciprocal, why? Oh, come on. And if you take the reciprocal, in other words, raised to -1, if you take the reciprocal, what is that? What's the reciprocal of earnings per share over price? Anyone? Come on. The reciprocal of this is price earnings ratio. Think about it. the reciprocal of that is price-earnings ratio. Isn't that right? Of course, it's not exactly like this specification, because price-earnings ratio is not, for this, earnings will have to be next period earning. Price is the current price. Price-earnings ratio is, like more of, average of earnings. But think about it. If you take the reciprocal, then it becomes price-earnings ratio. And think about it. The higher this number, the better it is, obviously, right? Everyone understands. Think about it. When earnings yield, the higher this number, right? That means for the price, you have more earnings, right? The higher this number, the better it is. On the other hand, that means if that's the case, this will have to be low number, price-earnings ratio. Low price-earnings ratio is an indicator of value stock, right? You understand why value stock has low price-earnings ratio? Huh? If price-earnings ratio is high,
company, so their earnings are going to be less or something like that.
Say that again.
Because they're not a growth company, so their earnings are not as explosive. I think they're just leveled off.
No. Earnings are big for the price. Earnings are big for the price. That's only way this fraction would have to be. The only way this fraction will be small will be when denominator is big, price numerator is small. In other words, it's exact because this is the reciprocal of this. When don't you think if this is high, that's a good stock, isn't that right?
Correct.
If this number is high, that's a good stock because for the price you get good earnings. You get good earnings, right? So if you flip it, then price-earnings ratio will have to be low. Now, then such a company is clearly not a growth firm. Growth firms generally have very high price-earnings ratio. Growth firms have high price-earnings ratio. So why? I'm gonna because growth firms,
they trade multiple times earnings, right, to reflect the growth or something like that.
Yeah, prices. That means price is overinflated, right? For earnings power, price is overinflated, right? In other words, that's overvalued. Growth stocks are generally overvalued because everyone is. Now think about it. Tesla was a very good example. Tesla's actual earnings power wasn't that great. Price earnings ratio of Tesla is always, almost like 200. That means what? For earnings per share of $1, price is $200. You understand? Tesla's price earnings ratio was like that. So what is that? Even though the price, there is so much demand. There is so much demand for that stock. So the price is for earnings. Price is unjustified, but that price is supported because of demand. That price is not justified. Tesla's price is not justified even now. I mean, back when Tesla's price was even 200, that was even overpriced. But because it was, people, the market believed in its growth potential, they all bought, and not only because of the growth potential, people were just, growth potential is only a rationalization, but a lot of people just jumped in on the bandwagon. Everybody wanted to. They don't care about the intrinsic value. They just wanted to jump in on the bandwagon. That pushed up the price. You understand? Tesla was, but think about it. The earnings, let's say price earnings ratio is low, something like 5. What does that mean? Price earnings ratio of 5 means, earnings is $20, but the price is, $100. I mean, exactly, that will give you, price earnings ratio of 5. But, think about it. If you flip the number, and if you flip the number and look at the earnings yield, then for paying $100 price, you get $20 earnings. That's very good compared to Tesla, which had like price earnings ratio of 200. That means you pay $200, but you get $1 earnings per share. That's what Tesla is like, right? High price earnings ratio. A high price earnings ratio means low earnings yield, and but think about it. If this ratio is 5, that's low price earnings ratio. That means this earnings yield is 1 over 5. 1 over 5, 20%, right? 1 over 5, 20%. So if you pay $5, the stock is $5, it gives you $1 earnings per share. If the stock is $10, it gives you $2 earnings per share. If the stock is $100, it will give you $20 earnings per share. Makes sense? Higher earnings. So high earnings yield, it will give you low price earnings ratio, right? Price earnings ratio. Low price earnings ratio means value stock, not the growth stock. Value stock means, for the price, you get much more value. When you say value, right? This is a value deal. What does that mean? Oh, you pay like, for the price you pay, you get a lot. That's value, right? I don't know what can that be. I don't know. Can't KFC? I don't know. KFC hot wings. I mean, you get 24 wings for like $19. I'm not sure. You call that value deal, right? A value. Think about it. Who wouldn't like high earnings yield? But high earnings yield means low price earnings ratio, right? And high price earnings ratio means growth stock, but the growth stocks have very low earnings yield. Does that make sense? Now it's 8:14. I'm not gonna. So we went on without any break. So let's keep going, and I'll finish up at 8:30. So I just want to make sure everyone is clear about this. Is everyone clear about earnings yield? Larissa, are you clear about earnings yield?
I'm clear.
Okay, Anthony, you're clear. Good. Anthony, you're okay. I got one clear. Larissa, are you clear about this? Larissa?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, check. Anna, are you clear about this? Anna?
Yes.
Okay, great. Check. Ethan, are you clear about this?
Yes.
Okay, good. Giselle, are you clear about this? Giselle? Are you there, Giselle? All right. I will have to assume either Giselle is clear about that or just not there. And then that brings us to the, so now, all this, just a repetition of, and the dividends, I told you, dividend payout ratio, symbol is D, right? That's the percentage of earnings paid out as dividend, right? But then think about it. 1 minus D will be the plowback ratio. Isn't that right? You saw that from here, right? Oh, come on. So they paid out from the EAT, net profit of 10 million. They paid out 10%. 10% is dividend payout ratio. So it is $1 million. The 9 million is retained earnings. The $9 million is in a percentage, right? This is 90%. Isn't that right? This is the 90% of the EAT. 90%. And this is called plowback ratio. Plowback. Ugh, even my mouse died on me. Okay, plowback. Plowback ratio. I don't have. Plowback ratio, which is, the symbol for that is B. Plowback. Then, you can tell B is 1 minus D. Isn't that right? B is 1 minus D. So, yeah, of course. They are complementary. If the dividend D is 10%, B will be 90%. If D is 30%, B will be 70%. So think about it. The higher the plowback ratio, the more reinvestment is made. The more reinvesting is made. So the more reinvesting is made, then growth is actually, think about it, reinvesting. What is being reinvested is the plowback, right? 90% of the EAT is reinvested, and the company will grow by as much as the growth rate. And how is the growth rate then calculated? Return on equity times the plowback ratio. Now think about it. Return on equity is the equity's earnings power. And how is the return on equity calculated? What is the return on equity? How is the return on equity calculated? Does anyone? If you remember, right, and if you took Finance 230 in ratio analysis, this is all covered. Or if you took, Business 210, it's also covered. So there are two profitability ratios. I mean, there are 5 ratio categories, right? First category is profitability ratios. Profitability category. I'm not going to spell out everything. Second, liquidity. Liquidity ratios. Liquidity category. Third, asset management ratio category. Asset management. Management. I'll just write it like this. I don't know why write this.
Cash flow, Professor. Cash flow, profitability, debt management, liquidity, and market value.
Yeah, yeah. And debt management. No, cash flow. The name is not cash flow. I mean, the category name is not cash flow. It is, you know, liquidity. Okay, liquidity. Because liquidity means cash. And debt management category. And 5, stock valuation or market valuation. Market, just, you know, let's call it valuation because, you know, it's valuation ratios, valuation. And one of the valuation ratios, you know, there are like, you know, 2 to 5 ratios in each category, right? 2 to 5 in valuation. One of them was, you know, we already talked about that, price earnings ratio. Okay, another one is market price to book value ratio. Okay, in the profitability category, there are like, you know, several, like at least like 4, but most you know, important too is return on assets, return on total assets, and return on equity. And I'm not going to go over, you know, the other categories, but, you know, basically return on equity and return on assets, they are all basically profit. There are 2 versions for return on assets. It's profit over total assets. This profit means, you know, net profit, in other words, EAT. So, in other words, there are 2 versions here again. This profit can mean EBIT, operating profit, in other words, EBIT over total assets, or it can mean EAT. Over total assets. Whereas return on equity is strictly EAT. Because it's return on equity, you'll have to divide it by equity, right? Which is, you know, EAT. Now, think about it. Profit in this case means only earnings after taxes. Why? Because that's what belongs to the equity holders, right? And as the equity holder, of course, this equity is at time 0, right? Or time t, then this is EAT at time t plus 1. Think about it. This is like, you know, efficiency model. Efficiency, isn't it right? Let's say 1,000 shareholders, when 1,000 shareholders paid in $10 million into this company. 1,000 shareholders paid in at, you know, IPO. 1,000 share in the primary market. 1,000 shareholders paid in $10 million into this company. And if so, their equities productivity, their equities, if their equity was used productively, if their equity was used put to very productive projects, then the EAT will be high. Isn't that right? But if their equity was, unproductive, if the equity was used in unproductive projects, then the EAT will be small. So the ratio will tell you exactly how productive or how profitable or how efficient your equity was. Does that make sense? That's ROE, return on equity. Return on total assets, return on assets. Two versions. One, as I said, but generally, think about it. Return on assets, total assets include both equity and debt, right? So the point of, the focus of return on assets is to measure the productivity of the total assets, which includes both equity and debt. So for the debt holders, right, for the bond holders, a better measure of output or profit is EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes, right, rather than EAT. You understand? Because EAT, earnings after taxes, belongs only to the equity holders or stockholders, but for the bond holders or debt holders or lenders or creditors, this has nothing, this doesn't directly relate to them, but this relates to them. EBIT relates to them. So actually, using this ratio is more relevant than return on assets. But if you use this return on assets, if you use EAT over total assets, then think about it. Between ROA and ROE, which one is always bound? One of them is always bound to be greater than the other, right? If you use EAT for ROA, one of them is always bound to be greater than the other. Which one? Which one do you think is always bound to be greater than the other? This is also mathematical logic. Which one is supposed to be greater? Anyone?
ROE.
ROE, yes. Was it Anthony?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Anthony, I'll give you 0.25. Anthony, you have this mathematical logic. You got it. Look, yeah, of course, because you have the same EAT. You divide it by two different denominators, and whichever is a greater denominator, right? Whichever denominator is, of course, total assets is greater because total assets is equity plus debt, right? Equity is only a part of total assets. So mathematically, this number has to always come out greater, right? Because the same numerator divided by the smaller denominator, the whole fraction will be greater, right? The value of the fraction will be greater, right? Make sense? All righty, so we now understand what return on equity is. Think about it. The return on equity is the productivity of the equity, right? Then think about it. Growth rate is, if you don't have the dividend data, then how can you find the growth rate? Growth rate is ROE times the plowback ratio. Now think about it. You have the productivity of your equity is represented by return on equity, and plowback is the equity that is being reinvested. So equity being reinvested, and this is the ratio, not the actual dollar value of equity, and they are ratios. Both of them are ratios. So basically, what does this mean? It's the product, in other words, synergic effect, synergy. It's the synergy of these two ratios, these two uh, uh, in other words, the product means intersection. It's the common ground. So the return on equity will grow by return on equity coupled with the plowback ratio will give you the growth rate. Okay, so this is another way of finding growth rate if you don't have the dividend data. Now, then also think about it. If the company, if the a company that pays constant dividend, in other words, in zero growth model, let's go in. What is the zero growth model? Zero growth model or a constant dividend model gives you the stock value as dividend over K. Right? Remember, this is the constant dividend model, right? Constant dividend or zero growth model, right? And dividend, of course, there's no time subscript because dividend is a constant dividend in this case. But then think about it. That means, at least they pay out something as dividend, and then there's plowback. But suppose the company is not just paying out dividend, but entire earnings as dividend. The company that pays out entire earnings as dividend, right? Think about it. This is at least right. It's dividend is a result of earnings per share times dividend payout ratio, right? Then that means there is plowback, right? That means 1 minus dividend which is B, right? Will be reinvested. Okay. Oh, give me a break. Small. A little margin. In other words, this is B, right? B times earnings per share. Such a company will grow. This is the growth. This company will grow, right? You might wonder, dividend is constant. Yeah, dividend is constant, but although dividend is constant, earnings per share isn't constant, right? And there's something, but this one, reinvested, this one, entire earnings per share is paid out. Then this company, in other words, right? Nothing is reinvested because this is 0. That means 0, right? Nothing is reinvested. So the difference between the two firms, this is, no growth. Such a company has no growth potential, right? This company has growth, but this company has no growth potential. So you see the difference between growth firm, right? V0 and the company no growth firm, V0 and NOG, right? No growth. So between the company that pays out dividend and the company that pays out the whole earnings per share as dividend, right? Between the company that pays small fraction of earnings per share as dividend and the company that pays out the entire earnings per share as dividend, the difference is called, obviously, there will be the price will be different, and the growth, the price of the growth firm will have to be think about it. Price of the growth firm will be lower. Mathematically, it will have to be lower, right? Mathematically, think about it. If the earnings per share is $10, for example, earnings per share is $10. Dividend is $1, right? They paid out 10% as dividend. Now, using the same required return, let's say required return is 10%. And 10% as well, required return. Now think about it. Under the two scenarios, under these two scenarios, it's about the same company. This company, under one scenario, decided to pay out only 10% or $1 as the dividend. So then think about it. The company's growth value will be, stock price will be 1 over 0.1, which will be $10. But this will be $10 over, and on the scenario 2, they decided to pay out entire earnings as dividend. And it's $10 over 0.1, and it's going to be $100. So the price of the growth firm will be lower than the no growth firm, and the difference between the two is called present value of growth opportunity. Present value of growth opportunity. Okay. We're gonna have to. We're out of time, so we're gonna have 10 minutes past. We're gonna have to come back to this next time. Well, as again, 2 hour 40 minutes of non-stop. We had one 10-minute break in between, like a rock concert. I'm exhausted, and I hope you guys are not as exhausted as me. But it's Thursday night. I hope you guys will have a peaceful rest of the night. Okay, and don't forget the midterm one starts tomorrow. Okay.
All right. Good night.
All right. Good night. Take care, everyone. Take care, Anna and Giselle. Yeah, I'll stop sharing. I'll stop recording and sign out.